Our Story Production presents The Road to Our Story, spotlighting an in-depth look at many of The Road to Our Story magazine's featured articles. So get ready, for you're about to travel on The Road to Our Story.
Hello, I'm Jason Howland, and welcome to Speaking of Health, a place to help you learn how to live a longer and healthier life. A robin singing in the morning, a baby's laugh, the ticking of a clock, all are just examples of sounds many of us take for granted, but not people with hearing loss. However, those folks don't have to live in a world of quieter, less distinct sound. With us today is Dr. John Tunnell. He is a board-certified audiologist at Mayo Clinic Health System. Thanks for joining us today on Speaking of Health.
Thanks, Jason. I'm glad to be here. It's always a pleasure to talk about what I do.
Well, today we are talking about hearing loss and the help of high-tech hearing aids. First of all, let's start off with the basics. How does the ear work, and how do we hear sounds through our ears?
Well, the ear is quite a complex mechanism. It starts with sound vibrations. Anything that vibrates generally produces a sound if it's within the frequencies that the ear is sensitive to, like 20 to 20,000 cycles or hertz as they're known. Vibrations go down the ear canal, and the first thing they come to is the eardrum, and it's just like a regular drum. You know, if you tap it, it resonates, it makes a sound. That drum then transfers vibrations through the middle ear, where the bones of the middle ear are located, the hammer, anvil, and the stirrup. They all vibrate, and they're positioned in a way that actually amplifies the vibrations before it reaches the cochlea. And the cochlea is where the nerve of hearing begins. As these vibrations go into the cochlea, it's filled with fluid. And if you can imagine like seaweed in the ocean, a wave comes by and the seaweed bends. Well, in this fluid, you've got thousands of hair cells that bend with the vibrations. And it's the bending that triggers the electronic impulse, sending it down to the nerves to the brain, and where you finally are aware that you've heard a sound. And so the ear basically is broken down into three general parts: the outer ear, the part that we see, the middle ear on the other side of the eardrum, and then the inner ear, where the cochlea is, things you can't see, and the rest of the brain.
It's a pretty intricate system then, it sounds like.
Oh, it's extremely complex. It can hear ranges of sounds, like it's frequency-wise from 20 to 20,000 hertz, but intensity-wise from 0 dB, which is defined as the softest sound an adult normal hearing person can hear. I mean, we're talking about just infinitesimal amounts of vibration up to very large, 120, 130 dB sounds, which are millions and millions of times louder than the softest sounds.
Well, today we are talking about hearing loss. What is the most common cause of hearing loss?
Two causes are generally cited as most common: noise and aging. But a lot of the hearing loss of aging is also thought to be the result of growing up in a noisy culture, because studies have been done of people in quiet environments, jungle dwellers, tribes in the jungle, and they tested the hearing of their elderly. Very good hearing compared to the average person living in America. So they call it socioacusis. It's just the result of vacuum cleaners, blenders, cars, airplanes, all the things that we take for granted all over a lifetime do have their effect.
And what do? Do they wear down the workings of the ear over time? Is that what they're doing?
It's the main problem is in the hair cells. If they are overstimulated, they become fatigued. And usually, you can go hunting or something, and you find that you feel a little bit, your hearing is affected, but the next day, your hearing seems to be better. But you repeat that often enough, and the hair cells fatigue, and then they die. They actually break off, and they don't recover. They don't repair themselves. And so once that happens, that becomes a permanent loss. And it's the high frequencies that tend to be most vulnerable to that. And so most hearing loss is a high frequency loss in the beginning, and then it migrates to the other frequencies, but that's the most common problem we see.
Can hearing loss also be inherited? So, for example, if my father had hearing loss at an early age, does that mean I have a greater chance of
Oh, yeah.
having hearing loss?
Their estimates run about 50% of all severe hearing loss is inherited. And there are certain diseases that pass down family lines quite characteristically, and we look for those, so then we can predict, what the future's going to look for this person and what they can do about it.
Is there a general age group where you start to see signs of hearing loss?
Well, we test babies in the nursery at the hospital. That's now almost every state in the union, I think, has laws for doing that, because a lot of inherited loss starts at birth. Some inherited loss may start showing up in 30s and 40s. There's no particular age group. It can show up at any time, actually.
And what are some of the signs and symptoms of hearing loss that folks will see?
The most common complaint that I get is I hear, I just don't understand what people are saying. And this happens when you're in a room with maybe a group of people, or a room where there's other noises going on, like a restaurant. They know they're talking, they see the mouth moving, and they hear a sound coming out, but they just can't get the words clearly. So it's not a loss of loudness as much as it is a loss of clarity. So a lot of people don't think they have hearing trouble, they think it's something else.
So when should you go see your doctor?
Whenever you suspect a problem hearing, or if family members are telling you, you need to get your ears checked, because they will probably recognize it before you do. The person with the problem is sometimes the last one to really find out about it. Go to your family doctor, check your ears, see if you need your ears cleaned. They may check some other things to make sure your health is good. And then beyond that, they'll refer you to somebody like me, hopefully, and we can do a more in-depth diagnostic test and really see if it's a hearing loss. If it is, the cause of it, possible treatment, how severe it is, what sort of rehabilitation they might require.
And what are some of those tests that you do in audiology?
I usually start off by, after we've checked the ears, we'll do what's called tympanometry. It's a pressure test to see how well the eardrum is moving. That will pick up fluid in the ear, holes in the eardrum, perforations, abnormalities of the middle ear. Then we do an audiometric test. We put earphones on, just like many people have had in school. Hear a beep, you raise your hand. Same sort of thing, except we do much more extensive than what the schools do. After that, we also check for words. We see this is the clarity factor. How clearly do you hear? We know what you hear for sounds, but now how well do you understand what you hear? And so we will do a test called word recognition test to see how well you can successfully repeat a series of 25 words or so. And we do each ear independently. And that really is a test that gives us a very good idea how well you're functioning.
So when should someone be given help with a hearing aid?
Whenever the hearing loss is impacting their life and there's no medical treatment to fix it. They've been to the physician or the ear specialist and there's no treatment. That's when they need help with amplification to make things louder. And the hearing aids are designed to pick up primarily the frequencies that you don't hear. They don't amplify every sound, only the sounds that are the most difficult for you to pick up.
So it's not like sticking just a general microphone into your ear. It's picking up specific sounds that you're having difficulty with.
Exactly. The hearing aids of today are programmed by the computer. We put your test results in the computer, frequency by frequency, level of decibel by decibel, and then the hearing aid the computer sets the hearing aid for that pattern. And so if you have good hearing at one frequency, it won't put any energy there. It'll put it where you need the most help.
And I would assume that hearing aids over the last 10, 20, 30 years have improved greatly.
Yes. The new digital products are really fun to fit. The older analog hearing aids were really, it was an art form. Mm-hmm. Now it's more scientific, but we have the computer to help you figure out a lot of these problems of what to fit and how to fit it, and it's really become a lot easier.
What are some of the different styles of hearing aids that are out there?
Well, all the styles that used to be are still available. You've got behind the ear hearing aids, where you put an ear mold in the ear. You've got in-the-ear hearing aids where an impression of the ear is taken, and then the hearing aid is actually built from that impression. And the newest one to come out and the most popular these days is the over-the-ear, are also called the receiver in the canal, receiver in the ear. It's a very small hearing aid behind the ear, then there's just a little thin wire that comes down the front of the ear, and the actual speaker from the hearing aid is down inside your ear canal. And that gives, it allows us to keep the ear open rather than plugging it up like we used to with the older hearing aids. Because with the digital revolution, they've learned how to tune out the feedback. You know, the problem that most people had in years past is just feedback, and all of our efforts would go into reducing the feedback because you can't hear anything if your hearing aid's whistling. Mm-hmm. They've done this digitally now, so now we don't even have to plug up your ear for most cases. And it's much more comfortable. People love it. People have worn the old hearing aids, switched to the new ones, just can't believe the difference.
Besides comfort, are there other benefits as far as the hearing with the newer style hearing aids?
Well, the hearing is more natural. The digital processing, again, targets just softer sounds. It doesn't make everything louder, just the soft sounds that you don't hear. The louder ones are just kind of left naturally as they are. They've also now incorporating assistive listening functions using Bluetooth technology, where Bluetooth means one device talks to another device exclusively. Nobody else can break into that. And so you can pair the hearing aid to a streamer, which is a device you wear on you, and you get a phone call, for instance, on your cell phone. You push a button and you just can start talking. You don't have to hold the phone up to your ear. Some people now have cars that do this. Well, the hearing aids are using that same technology that you have in the cars, hands-free communication. You can also receive your television program that way and adjust the volume to your ears through the hearing aids without the other members of the family having to leave the room, because you need it up loud. And so these things are making life more comfortable for people generally, because beside basic communication, most people, especially senior citizens, that TV is a very important part of their life, and communication on the telephone is a big part of their life. And without those two, life just isn't as enjoyable. And so they're addressing these and making it a lot easier to use these devices.
The Bluetooth hearing aids, are they very similar to the Bluetooth headset that you would have for your phone then?
It's the same thing in just a different shape, except the Bluetooth headset isn't tailored for your hearing loss.
Right.
The sound that you get through the hearing aid is the same sound that the computers decided you'll hear best with. And so it's more advanced than that Bluetooth device.
So Dr. Tunnell, if someone is experiencing hearing loss, but they put off going to the doctor, is their hearing going to get worse over time?
It'll only get worse as it would have naturally, regardless. Hearing aids will not prevent hearing loss from occurring. I mean, it won't stop you getting older. And there's nothing that the hearing aid does in terms of stimulating the ear to protect it in any way. The only problem is the longer you put it off, the harder it is to kind of learn something. I mean, if you wait till you're, can't feel things with your fingers anymore, the sooner you start, the more you'll enjoy it, the more you'll enjoy the benefits of it. So there shouldn't be a fear factor, like if I don't do it, I'm going to lose my hearing. And occasionally some people get that feeling. That's not it. It shouldn't be under compulsion. You shouldn't twist anybody's arm to come in. When they're ready, if it's affecting their lifestyle, they need to come in. And whenever you start's the best time.
And the process of getting fitted for a hearing aid, it sounds like it's pretty simple too, right?
Pretty simple. Like I said, first check with your family physician. Then we do if he refers to us, we'll do the hearing test, check everything out thoroughly. And then it's just a matter of a 45-minute appointment to program, show the person how to use it, how to clean it, and take care of it, change batteries. Then I usually have them come back again in a week or two for a follow-up visit. After that, they're pretty much on their own. But if they're having problems, we'll keep seeing them week to week until we solve the problem.
And you've been providing services at Mayo Clinic Health System in Fairmont for many years, but you're also going to be in St. James now as well, right?
That's right. We'll be going there initially twice a month, and depending on the the reception we get and how many people there are to see, we'll either up that or rethink it.
And that's the same situation where folks in St. James see their family doctor in St. James, and then they can be referred to you and see you
Sure.
right in Mayo Clinic Health System in St. James.
That's right. That's correct.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we are all out of time. I want to thank you, Dr. Tennell, for joining us today on Speaking of Health. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, it's been my pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me.
And that's it for us. Have a great day, everyone, and be healthy.
There you have it, folks. One of the favorite stories ripped from the pages of The Road to Our Story magazine. Let's have a look at another.
Hello, I'm Jeff Hagan, and welcome back to another episode of Spinning Wheels. It's the program that talks about everything that has to do with wheels. Today, we're glad to welcome back with us Tom Hawkins. He's the president and CEO of Hawkins Chevrolet in Fairmont, Minnesota, and he's an expert on wheels, car wheels, that is. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks. Glad to be back.
Well, Tom, when we had you here last time, we took a number of calls from people, and we actually had more calls that specifically were asking about finance itself. So today we would like to ask you and address those questions about finance. Can you tell us a little bit about financing when it comes to auto dealers?
Well, Jeff, that's a good question. Auto dealers for many years have been involved in the financing of cars that they sell. And it started many years ago, but there's two different types of finances. A direct loan where a customer goes to the bank themselves and gets a loan for their car. And then there's something called indirect lending where a customer can get a loan on their car via the car dealer. Many years ago, there was a lot of interest in car financing, but the banks didn't necessarily have the personnel to handle everybody that wanted to come in for a car loan. So they set up a program with car dealers that they could originate the loans on behalf of the bank, and which means they would take the loan application, they would do the paperwork, and do a lot of the upfront work for the bank, and the bank would service the loan. What that would do is they would offer lower interest rates for us to do that, which we could pass on to the customers and be competitive if they went in for a direct loan to the bank as well. And that helps the customer because that allows them to make their full purchase in one stop. They don't have to come to us, buy the car, then go to their bank and get the paperwork, then come back with the loan check. It allows them to do everything in one stop. So it's an incentive for the bank and an incentive for the dealership. Now, interesting thing about that is when I first got in the business back in the early 80s, we did everything by hand. And when somebody wanted to get a loan on a car, the first thing they had is they'd have these little loan calculators where we could punch all the numbers in. It would print out the interest rate and the interest amount, and then we'd have to feed the paper into the typewriter and hand type everything and hope you didn't make a mistake, and if you did, pull it out and do it again. And in about the mid-'80s, we were one of the first dealers our size that got a new dealership computer system. Not only did it automatically automate the bookkeeping process, but they had an option that you could do payment calculations for financing on cars. And not only did it automatically calculate what payments are by just putting the interest rate in the terms and things like that in with the push of a button, it would also print all the paperwork. You can put all the customer information in the computer and put a piece of paper in the printer and then push a button. It would print the whole thing out, so it saved lots and lots of time and lots of headaches. So that's been around a long time, but in the mid-'80s is when that started happening. So that made financing cars a lot easier, not only for the dealership, but for customers, made it a smoother process. And that's one of the reasons that car dealers are in a sense in the loan business, but it's an indirect basis. They work with a bank or with GMAC or Ally or even local or regional banks, but a customer gets a loan indirectly through the car dealer, and yet it's actually a benefit and many times a savings for the car customer.
Okay. And I know you have a person who, at Hawkins, I'm sure you have somebody that actually is the specialist on those type of, and financing itself, right?
Funny you should say that. We do. We have, most dealerships do, and we have a specialist in our dealership that does a great job. She works well with customers, and that's Tabitha Bickness, so she does a real good job.
Okay, well, mentioning Tabitha, why don't we have her join us here on Spinning Wheels via satellite?
Well, that's good. She can answer some questions that we have about financing today.
Sounds good. Tabitha, welcome to Spinning Wheels.
Thank you. It's good to be here today. I've always been a big fan of spinning wheels.
So Tabitha, can you tell us a little bit about what you actually do at Hawkins?
Well, I've been here at Hawkins since October of '04. I'm in the finance department. I do the paperwork. I find loans for people.
Tabitha, Tom and I have been talking about vehicle financing and what it takes to actually do the financing for the customers themselves. And we have some callers on the line that would like to ask you about finance, and we would like your input on that.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Okay, caller, are you there?
Yes, my question is, why are interest rates different with different vehicles?
That is a good question. Tabitha, you want to take that one?
There's a lot of factors that go into determining interest rates. For one, the age of the vehicle. A brand new vehicle, you're probably going to see a lot lower interest rates versus an old vehicle where the interest rate's going to be higher. Terms will be different, so a lot of it is based on the year of vehicle.
All right, thanks, Tabitha, and also thank you, caller, for that great question. And we do have more people on the line, so why don't we take another call? Caller?
What is a credit score? A bank told me that I had to have a good credit score in order to get a loan.
And very important and a good question, for especially nowadays. And Tabitha, why don't you answer that one?
Your credit score is the bank's way of measuring whether you're going to pay back your loan or not. There's many factors that go into determining your credit score. There's 3 different credit score places. One is TransUnion, one is Equifax, and one is Experian. We at Hawkins use Equifax, but it just shows your history, and it gives the bank a good idea of whether to borrow you the money, whether they're going to get their money back.
All right, well, thank you, caller, for that great question.
Yeah, Tabitha, she handled that one well. That's a difficult question that people have, but she did a good job of explaining that.
Well, we do have time for one more quick question. So, caller, are you there?
Yeah, what things do the bank look for when determining whether or not to give you a loan?
Boy, that is tough deciding on that one. Tabitha, you want to take a crack at this one too?
A lot of what the bank looks at is just your past history of loan payments. You know, if you've had another vehicle loan, how you've paid that, if you've paid it on time, or if you've been, consistently late on the vehicle. A lot of times they look at your debt to income ratio, whether you can afford to take on another payment or not. They might look at your income to make sure, adding that other payment won't put you in the hole. So a lot of factors go into determining whether they'll give you that loan or not.
All right, thank you, caller. That was another great question.
Yeah, that was a good question. Tabitha does a great job, and we're really lucky to have her on the Hawkins team, and she's a hard worker. And so if you've got questions on anything to do with financing, just get on our website and check out her emails, drop her an email, or give her a call. She's very helpful and will be glad to help with any questions about financing.
Thanks, Tom, and we'll see you back at the dealership.
Thanks again, Tabitha.
Yeah, thank you, Tabitha, for joining us today. Well, Tom, there is someone else that we'd like to share their thoughts with us here at the Spinning Wheels program.
Let me guess, the old car guy?
You got it, Tom, and it is the old car guy. Old car guy, are you there to join us?
Hey folks, Rusty here out on the back lot. Last time I told you a little bit about all that pent-up demand after World War II. So the car manufacturers, they made lots of new cars, but I'm going to skip ahead about 10 years, and we're going to talk about, I think, the best time in United States history. It was that mid-50s. Everybody was having babies, the families were getting bigger, and there was this whole new group of people in the United States called the middle class. And the car manufacturers, they had to make cars, especially for these families that wanted nicer things because they were making more money, they were buying houses, they were doing all this stuff. And arguably, Chevrolet probably did the best job of this. And everybody thinks of them today, those classic, that 55, 56, 57, even 58, 59 Chevys. They were great. America just loved them. But the guy that hated them was the guy that worked at the service station. Now, for some of you younger folks, you don't understand what a service station actually is. You used to be able to go pull in there to get gas, and not only did they pump it for you, but they'd wash your windows, they'd take a little whisk broom and dust out your floor mats, they'd check your oil, check your water, top it off, all with a smile, and send you on your way for usually 19 or 20 cents a gallon. But in these Chevrolet cars, it drove the guy nuts because if, I'm going to show you a little picture up here, 1955, here's 1955 Chevy Bel Air, and you see right here on the back fender, you just lift open the door, there's a gas cap, you put it in. So then out comes the 1956, and you look on the fender and go, there's not a door there. But there was a little secret compartment back by the taillight. There's a little piece of chrome. You turned like this, the taillight opened up, then the gas tank was in there. So then now everybody recognizes the 1957 Chevy with that big fin on there. If you look right here, half that fin pulls open like this, and then there's your gas trap door. 1958, if you look for it on the fin, it's not there. You got to go back behind the bumper, and there's a little trap door there in the panel. Finally, in 1959, you look at this car here, you don't see anything, but if you flip down the license plate, there was your gas cap there. And you know, they kind of stuck with that deal for about the next 20 years, pretty much. Most everybody put their stuff back there. But anyway, just a little trip back in history. About break time, the donuts should be done. I'll talk to you next time. This is Rusty, the old car guy, back on the back lot. We'll see ya.
All right, well, thank you, old car guy. You sure do know your cars.
Well, he should. He's been around a long time.
That's for sure. Well, Tom, I'm afraid speaking of time, we have run out of time here on the program, but we would like to thank you once again for joining us today, telling us a little bit about finance and our viewers that are watching about it. So again, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you, and I'm Jeff Hagan, and we'll see you again next time with another edition of Spinning Wheels.